In perhaps the least surprising move, the Marlins and Peter Bendix, the first trade is executed with the Tampa Bay Rays. Vidal Brujan is in and looks very intriguing. We're going to talk about that trade, plus some of the other roster moves on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England. Welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, on X at Miami Marlins _UK. Make sure you're subscribed to the pod. It is your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. There is a YouTube channel, of course. Make sure you head on over there. Hit subscribe there also. And get into the comments. Absolutely get into those comments. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And you can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Delighted to welcome back on Wednesday, the 22nd of November. The UK GOAT is back in the house and here to celebrate a happy birthday to me. So happy birthday to me and welcome back, Sean. How are we doing?
Yeah, after 2 weeks without an episode, I'm back in 2 days. So
there we go.
It's good to join you, Pete, but especially on your birthday, mate. Happy birthday. 40, but look 30. I don't know how you do it, whereas I look 50 and I'm not even 40 yet myself. So not at all jealous, but all the best, mate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And what better way to start the birthday celebrations than talking about Marlins baseball and talking about Marlins baseball and the Peter Bendix era truly arrived over the weekend, mate. The first trade. Actually, there was the first, I think, free agent signing as well. I believe this is the case. But for certain, his first trade has been executed. It was executed on Friday in and around the non-tender deadline. You know, the Rays and the Marlins the last couple of seasons have made some deals because, you know, fundamentally the Rays have got a lot of talent. They cycle their rosters pretty vigorously. And so this type of opportunity will arise. So we end up, the Marlins drop a trade and they acquire two guys, Vidal Brujan and Calvin Fauché. And we're not 100% sure on that pronunciation, but we're going to run with it. And for me, Brujan, obviously the kind of headline name that people know about primarily because of his prospect status from before, mate. So Sean, when you saw this one drop, were you surprised that a player of kind of Brujan's caliber, albeit major league performance thus far has been subpar, but the caliber, the prospect status has been lofty. So for the Marlins to get someone like this on the relative cheap, felt like a bit of a dub. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's proof that his prospect shine has definitely worn off. That the Marlins can acquire him for, as you said, a pitcher that whose numbers really don't look that appealing, and a 17-year-old who admittedly had apparently been playing well in the DSL. But even in 10 years' time, we might rue this conversation. But
it's again, on the record, mate. So
it is now. Everything lasts forever. But no, Brujan is a former top prospect, and we spoke yesterday about Hampson and how he had that sort of depth in positions, and if at worst Brujan can kind of take that role in, obviously at a lower financial figure as well, and basically anything that he does for the Marlins is going to be pretty much gravy, depending on how that 17-year-old goes. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, but I think it's proof that this is maybe not as big of a deal as it would have been previously a few years ago. But, you know, all young players are always just an adjustment away, aren't they? And obviously, Bendix has experience with him, knows him as a player, as an individual. So maybe he sees something more than other people at the Rays do. So time will tell. But yeah, it's definitely something that'll be interesting, especially when we get into spring training, isn't it? That's going to be a name that's going to be on everyone's lips. It's going to be something that we're going to be able to pay attention to. And yeah, if it gets off to a hot spring, then all of a sudden, you know, the articles start to write themselves, don't they?
Yeah, they do. We'll talk about what he's done thus far at the big league level shortly, but from a defensive perspective, like the bat hasn't come around thus far at the big league level, as I mentioned. From a defensive perspective, though, where's his best position? If we think about, he's played multiple positions, but where do we think his actual best position could and should be?
I mean, it's realistically, it's going to be up the middle in the infield, isn't it? It's going to be shortstop, second base, and his value there is even more so now without that sort of shift being in the game as well. So I think that'll be interesting to see where the Marlins play. Obviously, Rice is pretty much plugged in at second base. The Marlins, we know, have a shortstop gap, but I think realistically for Brujan, if he's pegged in as a starting player in the starting 9 to begin the season, the off season has probably not gone well. I think he is still going to be very much that depth guy, maybe even a guy that starts off in the minors and go from there. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, he's an almost zero cost acquisition. So I think the Marlins can see how he goes to begin with, either at the minors or in the bench role. And he's got a point to prove, hasn't he? He's going to have a chip on his shoulder now. The team that drafted him high, that had him in their system for years, has given up on him. So he's going to be coming into spring and hopefully in the best shape of his life and all those kind of cliches. With a point to prove. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Yeah, well, just on that topic, by the way, I believe he's out of minor league options. And so that's probably half the battle for the Rays, where he's out of option years. So the Marlins making this move is them committing to him being on the roster. It's in effect, in some ways, like a Rule 5 selection, to be honest with you, where you have to carry them. And clearly, obviously, they can decide to DFA him and outright him, I guess, at some point if he passes through waivers, etc. But this is a signal of intent that they're trading for him to make the roster, which I think is the reason why Garrett Hampson ends up being non-tendered, where you're thinking, okay, we're going to bring in Brujan. Maybe the ceiling's higher than Hampson's potentially. But, Sean, when we look at the big league stats anyway thus far, the headline for me is you rock on to, I'm on Baseball Reference anyway, and you rock onto there and you see his career OPS plus is at 27 in nearly 250 at bats. So what? That's give or take half a season at the big league level, I guess, with an OPS plus of 27. These numbers, when I looked at them, gave me very Marlins rebuild vibes, to be honest with you. So I think it's fair to say for Brujan, offensively anyway, the only way is up. It can't get any worse than this. So I'm very intrigued to see whether they can make any adjustments. And obviously, the Marlins have got a new hitting coach to go and find as well. So that's another adjustment the Marlins will need to make. But I mean, the numbers themselves, Sean, there's little to be encouraged about. But is there anything in there that you can spot that encourages you at all? That maybe he's been unlucky? Is there BABIP? Is there reverse BABIP woes? There's something going on here with this dude.
I mean, it's a small sample size, so we'll add that one in as well. I can't just use BABIP. But yeah, the BABIP's low. But the one thing that does give me pause is if you look at the years where he was a major leaguer, so 2021, 2022, 2023, his years in the minors specifically, well, only at AAA in those years, have all been good. So the WRC plus was over 100. So that's a positive. So it's a positive that he played well in the minors, but then struggled in the majors. Gives you a bit of hope that maybe he's just an adjustment away. It's not like he was going down and then struggling in the minors as well. But also it gives me pause for concern because is he just a quad A player? Is he the player that can rake in the minors and then does nothing in the majors? We as Marlins fans have seen plenty of that during the rebuild.
Oh, baby.
But yeah, it is a case that he's got the skills. The speed is there. He's got a little bit of pop for a middle infielder, but not a lot. The speed for me is his main attribute that could actually be delivered on at the major league level. So yeah, I think it is a case of he needs to try and work on his approach, obviously, but the walks were high and the Ks were low in the minors at AAA, and then they completely reverse. The walks plummet and the strikeouts start to grow. So I think it is a level of he needs to develop a little bit more. He's not making those adjustments. Something's happening at the major league. Obviously, the better pitchers are there, obviously, but he's got a lot of talent, and it is a case of he just needs more opportunities at the major league level. Test him for longer. The Rays obviously are always competing, so at a certain point they can only put him out so often. The Marlins, as we saw in the rebuild with your man Lewis Brinson specifically, they had at bats for days for him to try and prove his worth, which ultimately he never did. Maybe this year is a good opportunity for Brujan to go out there, get 250, 300 at bats at the major league level, and see if he can hang. And if he can't, then the Marlins have lost a 17-year-old from the Dominican League, which hopefully, as we said, doesn't come back to haunt us.
Absolutely. We're going to continue this conversation as well, because there's a second part of this trade. Equally, the Marlins have signed an X-Ray as well. So, the connection is strong. They've also added Victor Mesa Jr. to the 40-man. So plenty to talk about here in terms of roster moves. But before we do that, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Yes, sir. And you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, has a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, guys, you're back here with me, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, on Wednesday, the 22nd of November. We are talking trades, we are talking roster moves, and free agent signings. Tons of action. Many of it is happening with names that we've not really known before. Nevertheless, we've got you covered here on Locked On Marlins, digging into everything. Brujan, the centerpiece, I think, of this deal. They did add a pitcher, a right-handed pitcher in Calvin Fauché. Again, pronunciation to be confirmed on that one, but that's what we're rolling with for now. It rolls off the tongue, so we're going to go with it. Sean, when I saw this guy's headline numbers, I was not that impressed. Similar to Brujan, but again, with Fauché, is there any standout trait, skill, historical stat that we can get excited about here with this one?
So the stats, not particularly, unfortunately. And as you said, with the name, I think we'll go with Fauché just to stay away from any FCC violations, to be honest. But the one thing that did sort of scream out to me was a couple of references to his pitch makeup, and that he's got a curveball with incredible spin rate. So that will be a pitch that, for me at least, will be interesting to see in spring and see how that movement happens. And also, he doesn't throw a changeup, which will be interesting because, as we know, the Marlins, it'd be interesting to see if the Marlins can not only develop a changeup, but completely invent one for a guy. So it'll be interesting to see again in spring if he's throwing out a changeup here, there. But yeah, ultimately, this is an ultimate throw-in, isn't it? He is an arm for hire, and as we've talked about since the dawn of time, you can never have enough arms. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, this is definitely just a throw-in that you never know, do you? Hopefully, Bendix has a better idea than we do about baseball and scouting. So I'm sure he had a trick up his sleeve. Yeah,
I'm not convinced that this is going to be the on the Peter Bendix Hall of Fame. I think when all's said and done, I think to your point, a throw in, a filler, let's see, you never know. Like, we may need someone like this. Feels the most likely. But the one positive thing is it has, expanded my pronunciation knowledge as well. So that's definitely helps, being a byproduct of this trade, which is good. Okay, so let's talk about a signing they made in Tristan Gray. Sean, I must say, this guy has caught my eye. When you talk about stats, minor league stats, this guy in particular, it remains to be seen what can be delivered at the big league level. But in Tristan Gray, who was DFA'd or waived, however you want to phrase it, recently, elected free agency, the Marlins end up signing him on a minor league deal, we have to say. For me, this profile is very intriguing. And this was before they made the move for Brujan, which we assume is going to be playing some shortstop as well. Gray has spent plenty of time at shortstop, but also some time at third base recently too. And it's fair to say, like, if, we don't really know the future of Jake Burger. Yeah, he was playing at third base, but a lot of people see Burger maybe sliding, into a DH role or something else. So I do wonder what opportunity may come for him, if any, to be honest with you. So what should we expect out of Tristan Gray here, Sean?
I want to be positive and say a lot of home runs.
Please.
I could also be negative and say a lot of strikeouts. He's a prototypical power bat, isn't he? He's going to give you a lot of pop. So 63 home runs in the last 2 years at the AAA level, but that comes with a nigh on 32% strikeout rate. So yeah, a lot of excitement. It's going to be a lot of home runs, a lot of strikeouts, and it's about balancing that act, isn't it? You can get away with high strikeouts if you've got a lot of power, but it's a very fickle place to be, isn't it? All of a sudden, a couple of weeks without a home run, continuing to strike out 5-10 times a week just doesn't work out. So yeah, an interesting bat in the sense of a guy with power that, he's not young. He's going to be 28 coming into the season. So another guy that is a bit of a lottery ticket, but again, as a minor league contract, like it really is a zero price paid. So I think he'll get every opportunity in spring, and for us as Marlins fans to see that pop will be certainly exciting. And yeah, if he does deliver anything, it's literally money for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you got to look at the minor league production. I know the age and whatever, but, it's the numbers are there from a power perspective. The numbers are there equally from a strikeout perspective, as you've called out, Sean. So, the give and take, I guess, he looks the part anyway. And equally with actually made his debut with the Rays this season, 5 at-bats, including a home run. So, he's currently got a 272 OPS plus. So, the only way is down for him. I guess with Brujan it's up, and then it's down for Tristan Gray. But again, this isn't a shocker for me. Just kind of taking a step back here, Sean. Like Peter Bendix, 3 guys have been added to this roster. 2 of them the 40-man, one of them as a minor league guy. But 3 guys straight into the Marlins organization, all from the Rays organization. I mean, this is not a surprise, right? I expected this to happen. I don't know how often it will be happening, but with Peter Bendix's knowledge, he's gonna have a bias, right, to the Rays, and equally, there's information that he knows that others don't, and so that's kind of the opportunity for him and for the Marlins to kind of make some deals with some superior knowledge, perhaps. So I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to see him really, get outside of this Rays Marlins connection. But right now, I mean, I've got no problem with it, to be honest with you. But the old saying used to be, though, Sean, you shouldn't trade with the Rays, and the Marlins have already done that once. So I don't know if we should be worried or excited. I don't know. Where's your head on that one?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation, isn't it? Where, as you said, like whenever you trade with the Rays, like we're worried right now about this 17-year-old kid that we've just traded, because like obviously the Rays must know something that we don't.
Exactly.
But for the Rays to be able to pick talent from seemingly nowhere, and sometimes you question quite how they manage it. Now you've got Bendix taking players from the Rays, and it's a question of like, well, what does he know that they don't know? Or that it might just be that the Rays cast-offs are actually significantly better than what the Marlins have at their depth. But yeah, no, it makes sense that he's going to take players from an area that he knows. He's going to have a deep scouting knowledge of all of them. And yeah, they might all be in some way or shape or form damaged goods for the Rays that they're willing to let them go. But that doesn't mean that there isn't talent there, that there isn't ability there that hopefully the Marlins can squeeze out and get some value from. Because as we said, they've brought in these 3 players, and all of them have pretty much cost nothing. So hopefully it is a case that there is something there, and the Marlins are going to give them either a development opportunity, or just give him time. As I said with Brujan, give him major league at bats. See if what he's done in the minors translates. With Gray, you see the power in the minors. Maybe that does translate to the majors. Obviously, the K rate concerns me because 30% at the minor league usually translates to 45, 50 at the major leagues. But
that's Monte Harrison territory then,
which is a very good comp. Not for the power, but for the fact that Monte could do it in minors and then came up to the majors and couldn't. So, but yeah, it's these players that have one significant talent, one significant ability. Sometimes that can be enough to carry you to some value at the major league level.
Yeah, we'll see. It feels like the Marlins need a few power guys in reserve, in my opinion. Like there's a need there, and so I could see Tristan Gray getting some opportunity as well, to be honest with you. Another guy who may be getting or closer to getting an opportunity, Victor Mesa Jr. He was added to the 40-man, protecting him from the Rule 5 draft. Anthony Maldonado was also protected, which I think was the right call based on his production at AAA. But Victor Mesa Jr., this story, kind of lingers back to the Derek Jeter, start of Derek Jeter's term, really. But Victor Mesa Jr., it feels like he's been trending in the right direction for some time and has been making some, pretty impressive strides. So I guess from where we're at now with Victor Mesa Jr., he's on the 40-man. At this point, he's in touching distance of his call up to the big leagues at some point. I guess, anything happens with Jazz Chisholm Jr. at any point, Victor Mesa Jr. is, from what I'm seeing here, is probably next man up, I guess. I'm going to be playing some center field maybe for the Marlins. I mean, Peyton Burdick is also on the 40-man still. I'm a little bit uncertain about Peyton Burdick's future, frankly. I could see him being moved on this offseason. Avisail Garcia equally needs to be cleared, you would assume. But, yeah, where's your head at with Victor Mesa Jr. and how hopeful are you that these tools can translate to the big league level here?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, 21 at AA. The Marlins obviously feel that he was either at risk of being drafted in the Rule 5 or they just couldn't risk it in any shape or form. That they trust this guy enough that they're willing to do this a year early, maybe. Showed good power, good speed at the AA level. Defensively, you're right. He's a legitimate centre fielder. Whether or not I would consider him next man up, or whether it's just good depth, or it's a nod to the future. Adding him to the 40-man 1 year early doesn't really cost you too much. It costs you that option year if you bring him up, but if you don't, then you've not really cost yourself anything. And if he's a player for the future, doing it a year early doesn't concern me. So, I think it's a good move in the sense of if they left him into the draft and lost him, we'd then be spending the whole podcast probably berating them. Why didn't they protect him? If obviously a team are willing to put him into their 26-man roster. So it is a case of there's enough talent there that you can project a few years and say that this guy is probably going to be a major league starter at least, especially if he can defend the center field position at a good lick anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the power was encouraging. The speed's there. Like, the profile looks good. Profile looks good for Victor Mesa. To your point, like, it feels like, he's added to the 40-man probably a year, too soon, but maybe no risks, particularly if they really highly value him. I mean, you just don't know how each club thinks about its players and etc. But maybe the Marlins are really high on him at this point and thinking, let's take no risks. We've seen how tricky it can be to fill that center field void. And so, it's one of those, we'll add him now. Okay, you may have to use 2 minor league option years on him along the way to kind of, help him get to the right position. The guy I have forgot as well, when I was talking earlier, like Dane Myers clearly had some time at center field. So there probably are 1 or 2 guys that are ahead of him in the pecking order. But like I said, I could see some roster churn happening here, to be honest with you. Like I said, I think Burdick's time with the Marlins is going to come to an end this offseason, to be honest with you, with no sources attached to that. It's just a gut feel. So, Victor Mesa Jr., one hell of a year in AA, and he deserves to be added to the 40-man. He's definitely trending in the right direction, but it felt like the Marlins were in some ways being overcautious, but I feel that's probably seated in them really valuing him. And so he's going to be one really interesting guy to look at into 2024 and his minor league year that he goes into. I don't know what level. You assume maybe he'd step up to AAA, I guess, for Victor Mesa starting the season, right? Maybe
start in Double-A, move up to AAA. Obviously, Double-A typically is the stronger league, especially with pitching, because that's where you leave your top guys that then move up to the majors.
Yeah.
Normally, AAA is left with sort of like your depth guys, your guys that are a bit older, that are your next men up.
Right.
So it's a delicate situation, but yeah, Double-A for sure. I'd imagine start and then move up to AAA for just give him some experience with some more experienced guys, some older guys. They might not be the top prospects, but they're older guys, a bit more savvy before coming up to the major league level.
Yeah. What was your take on Troy Johnson not being added to the 40-man, considering his AAA campaign? Equally, there's some potential opportunity at first base, it seems, obviously, with Yuli Gurriel obviously moving on, Josh Bell opting in, but Troy Johnston, it feels like he's got nothing left to prove. And perhaps, he looks like he could get an opportunity, is my sense, is that, from a Rule 5 perspective, he's one of the most likely players, I think, that could be taken just because of age, production, and he's kind of ready. So for more of a rebuilding club, like, why not, I guess? So surprised on him at all, or is it, are we just overvaluing him as a Marlins fan?
I mean, ultimately, like, the guy did everything he could do to get a call up. And the fact that he didn't get a call up, I think, surprised a lot of people. I remember hearing his name left, right, and center as to why isn't he getting an opportunity. So yeah, I don't know what the Marlins didn't see in him. Obviously, he's not gone yet. It's not necessarily the case that he's gonna get taken, but it certainly wouldn't surprise. I'd be more surprised if he wasn't taken than if he is taken, because the performance is there, like the power's there, the speed from a first baseman is a bit of a surprise, and that's something that he's delivering on. There's nothing in the stats that I can look at and go, oh, that'll be why they didn't want to keep him. And as you said, first base is a bit of a question going into next year.
So and the year after that too, right? So
it's a really difficult thing to try and explain, to be honest.
I guess so. It was a little bit head scratching, but equally the fact that he didn't get a shot at all last year, for me is an indicator. I remember seeing the way that the Marlins managed the Lewin Diaz situation, and you kind of knew that they just weren't as high on him that maybe the fans were. And I feel like we're in a similar spot with Troy Johnston, that the club, the organization themselves don't value him as highly, maybe just as we do as fans. But it is what it is. Either way, the Marlins are, they're off and running. They're making business. Peter Bendix has broke his duck, his cherry. First trade is in the books. No shocker it was with the Rays. It would have been like short odds on that it was going to be the Marlins and Rays would hook up for a deal, particularly in and around the non-tender situation. And they may have got a real value piece back here, particularly in Brujan. The prospect status was lofty. It's about giving him the opportunity and maybe a fresh start and seeing what the Marlins can do, which I think is going to be really intriguing. The Marlins definitely need a shortstop. I think Brujan, particularly his arm, looks like it plays at short, no doubt. But the stick has to improve from its current guys anyway. So overall, you have to be encouraged with some of the business they've done thus far, albeit like relatively minor moves, low-cost moves that Sean's called out. So we're encouraged, but you then have to start thinking about, okay, if they're not investing in a catcher and maybe they've got about 7 shortstop to choose from, then where are the Marlins going to look to upgrade this offseason? I think that's going to be the question that's in our minds. Soler, the DH spot, is that somewhere? Are they going to do something in starting pitching to try to replace Sandy? Is that where they're going to invest their resources? There's many ways they can go about this, Sean, but I'm still not quite seeing the puzzle coming together just yet in terms of what the plan is going to be. If you feel they were going to invest heavily into one spot, what spot do you think that would be?
You say invest heavily, like they're going to invest heavily. The current estimated payroll isn't that far away from last year's payroll.
No.
There's not a lot of money to spend, and there's not a lot of prospect capital. Obviously, there's pitching there, there's pitching depth.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be holding my breath waiting for this big seismic free agent move, or to a certain degree the trade either. I think they are going to nickel and dime their way through this off season. Give Bendix an opportunity to review the team. I think he'll have a very strong idea of what he's got in the organization, but you can only know so much about one of the 29 other teams. He needs a time in the organization, and I think this year is a good opportunity. I don't think this is a competitive year for the team. So I think there will be. I think you were right with the way you spoke the other day about the catching situation. They're going to take a scattergun situation where they're just going to take 7 or 8 misshapen toys and see if they can fix one up into an actual real player. That is the Rays way. That is the way that I think the Marlins will start to operate, and then it'll be a case of draft and develop. It doesn't sound very exciting, having only just got really through a rebuild, but I think that is certainly where the Marlins are at the moment. It's not quite ready to press that button, but I think it is a case of retool in 24, and then you've got a very short 25-26 window that you can extend with money if Bruce is willing or / able.
Perfect summary, I'd say, Sean Barrett. Good way to finish it here as well. I think the lasting statement I will give you guys, the strategy here, the Rays way, it's one that I know and love and cherish myself, and it is the spray and pray technique. It has served me well in my 30s anyway, but that's another story for another day. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, guys, and joining me and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, on Wednesday, the 22nd November. We'll be back on Thursday. I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about yet, so we'll be talking about something that is very Thanksgiving orientated. We'll be talking about that, maybe talking about, I don't know, turkey recipes. We'll see, but nevertheless, we'll be back on Thursday for a Thanksgiving extravaganza. Maybe even get a guest in for that as well. We'll see. We'll look forward to seeing you then.